President Trump invited Nancy Pelosi to come to the White House and make a deal to end that shutdown, as you know. But she says she'll RSVP no if he wants funding for a border wall. The speaker-designate spoke with NBC in an exclusive interview that's going to air tomorrow morning on the Today Show. Have a look-see.
Are you willing to come up and give him some of this money for the wall? Because apparently that's the sticking point.
No, nothing for the wall. We're talking about border security.
Nothing for the wall, but that means it's
well, we can go through this all, back and forth. No. How many more times can we say no? Nothing for the wall.
Oh, Nancy, she hates walls. Unless, of course, they're surrounding her Hawaiian resort vacation place where she's reclining. The president tweeted earlier today that funding shouldn't be an issue because Mexico's already paying for the wall via the new USMCA trade deal he negotiated. But Democrats, they don't see it that way. So what will last longer, the shutdown or people's New Year's resolutions? Let me bring in tonight's panel. She's a Fox News contributor and co-author of America in the Age of Trump. Jessica Tarlov is here, along with the politics editor at Insider and producer of the Fifth Column podcast. It is Anthony Fisher, and she's a correspondent at the Greg Gutfeld Show and an online reporter for National Review. Kat Timpf is back. Welcome, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So let's talk a little bit about Nancy, because she's saying no. This is no, Nancy. And she's got to get something done here. She can be a big deal maker. She has to bend on something. How does this end as her new speakership begins?
Well, hopefully it ends with them passing the stopgap bill to fund everything through September 30th except DHS, but get that until February 8th.
Will the Senate acquiesce to that?
Mitch McConnell, it seems, does not want to be embarrassed again and have President Trump turn around and say that he's not going to sign it. But I imagine that things are going to get even more dire for Republicans, who are the ones who are being blamed for the shutdown, and for good reason, since President Trump said, bring it. And now it's happening. And
but people also see that Democrats could pretty easily end it, and they're really not that far apart.
No, they aren't. So Mike Pence apparently went out there with $2.5 billion, and Dems came back with $1.3. I think actually it's missed in all of this that there was an initial offer from Democrats of $1.6 billion that Chuck Schumer put out there, and that's been lost in the narrative because President Trump just says all I've been asking for is the 5.6 or 5.8, and they want to offer nothing. But we did come to the table in the first place with the $1.6 billion, which is more than they're being offered right now. But I think Democrats are going to go about their business and legislate and say we have these things passed, and now it's on Republicans.
Okay, so the business is the shutdown. When will people actually start seeing the effects of the shutdown? Because we're talking about the effects, but for most Americans, it's theoretical.
Yeah, well, I mean, for most Americans, but for almost 2 million Native Americans, it's actually very real right now because they don't have access to law enforcement, courts, snow plows. This is actually happening. And if it goes on much longer, and we're only about 4 days away from the record, you know, they were talking about, you know, we're close to a record shutdown. We're very close to that. To be this, you know, to actually be getting to the point where it spreads to the general populace and becomes a national issue when you're actually so close to the original negotiating
when it gets to that point, who feels the pressure more?
I would probably say the Democrats feel the pressure more because they're taking over the House and they're less popular than the president. When I say not Democrats, Congress is less popular than the president. So the president can just sit back and say, hey, I've been trying. They're not coming close enough to me. What he says is they're not coming at all. But where sticking points are right now are very close to the original deal.
Okay, so, you know, when I talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ann Coulter running the country, it's because those are the two most vocal proponents of the extreme ends of either side.
Right.
And if the president caves, Ann Coulter's already said he's going to fold. We've grown apart. It's very sad.
Very sorry to Ann Coulter, but I do think that the president's going to cave because I don't think that Democrats are going to budge, and they are coming with the idea of we want border security, we just want to do it in a different way. So ultimately, it seems like they're being more reasonable when it comes to this issue. Trump just wants a physical wall, which doesn't really work and is very expensive, and most people who come here, they just overstay visas, and that's how we have illegal immigrants. There's not as many people just running over the border. That's not even really the main issue. So I really think that eventually he's going to just say, okay, fine, and then blame Democrats for not caring about border security.
He kind of did before. He's like, you know what, that's fine. We'll get the money from somewhere else. We'll take from the Defense Department, whatever. We'll get some money. And that's when some conservative voices became apoplectic.
Yeah, and it's a very sad day. It will be a very sad day for Ann Coulter, and I look forward to her tweets on that day. I look forward to her tweets.
Nothing if not entertaining. All right, well, Mitt Romney, He won't swear in as Utah senator until tomorrow. But the former Republican presidential nominee barged into Washington today, ripping President Trump's character with a scathing op-ed. This afternoon, Romney was asked why he's slamming the president, who endorsed his Senate run and reportedly considered him for Secretary of State. Watch.
I think it's very important for a president to demonstrate the qualities of integrity and honesty, forthrightness, empathy, and respect for the institutions of our democratic republic. I think those are all parts of the job. And while I agree with him on a lot of policy fronts and salute the work that's been done by the Republican leadership in Washington, there are places that relate to the, if you will, forming of national character that I think we can do a better job.
Oh, Mitt Romney's just better than everyone in the world. The president, of course, responded with his own Romney dig.
I wish Mitt could be more of a team player. You know, I'm surprised he did it this quickly. I was expecting something, but I was surprised he did it this quickly. But I am surprised because we've done a lot. And he actually says it. I read his op-ed. If he fought really hard against President Obama, like he does against me, he would have won the election.
Girl, no, you didn't. Romney's own niece, RNC Chair Ronna Romney McDaniel, sided with the president, calling Romney's words disappointing and unproductive. It's going to be an awkward Easter. So is Romney wise to shoot inside the tent? Jessica, President Trump is Mitt Romney's fault. If Mitt Romney had won, and instead of anticipating what people wanted with his great character and his moral superiority, if he had actually put forth better solutions and been a more believable, authentic candidate and beat President Obama, who was very beatable in 2012, he would be looking at his second term, wouldn't he?
That's one way to look at it. I'm not sure if Mitt Romney had performed better in that first debate, if things would have gone differently, but it certainly would have been an incredibly close race comparatively. I'm sick of these Republicans that find their soul and go out there and they write these op-eds, and there's a whole culture of them, and I'm thrilled to have Max Boot on my side and Bill Kristol and all of these neocons who were out there for years, you know, saying that we were the devil and we're going to ruin the world, mostly because of our foreign policy. I'm talking about Democrat foreign policy here, and now have a new moral compass, but still would likely vote with the president on 9 out of 10 issue items. And Mitt Romney made it perfectly clear that the domestic agenda he's totally fine with. He said, I would vote for the wall. I'm happy about the tax cuts. He wants to repeal and replace, well, originally he wanted to repeal and replace, and now I guess he wants Romney Care redux.
Romney Care was an utter failure, and that was the template for Obamacare. And
I'm just saying he's not going out there and saying that. And this was the issue with Corker and Flake, that they still vote with the president, but they go out there and they write these fiery op-eds.
They both quit. They both quit because, I mean, I'm agreeing with you in that I think those
I was
people,
thrown. It's so unusual.
I think those people are essentially toothless, and it takes much more courage to go after the president when you're winning and when you have something to lose. So what is Mitt Romney trying to do? Is he launching an insurgent presidential campaign here?
I very much doubt it. He's run for president twice now. He's actually his Senate win is actually only his second electoral win ever. He's lost more than he's won. I think he's establishing himself. I think he wants to go back home to his family. He wants to go back home to Utah and say, "Hey, I tried. I kept the moral stature that is supposed to be the Republican brand."
Do that through your actions and not through your gum flapping.
I believe that's just what his motivation is, because he's not running for president again.
Do you think he's signaling that there's a group of people within the Republican Party who are going to launch a bid for the Republican nomination?
I don't think so. I think that this is just more of the same. He really went after Trump very, very harshly in 2016, called him a phony.
Didn't do anything.
I
think at that point, honestly, he thought that he was going to be drafted into the race in 2016.
And the only reason, he just does what is best for him opportunistically, right? Because that point, maybe he thought that. And then he started being nice to Trump again when he thought he might be considered for Secretary of State. We all remember that little picture with that cute little dinner of them together. It was in a very romantic setting. It was all very strange. I think that Mitt Romney just sees an opportunity here to set himself apart and get maybe some different people on his side, the same people, ironically, who said that binders full of women was just this huge, crazy, sexist thing. Remember when that was crazy?
That was the worst thing that ever happened.
Remember when that was can we just throw back Wednesday to that?
I pray for a Republican candidate that only has binders full of women. That's the most misogynistic thing they do. But we talk about this a lot. These people are acting like they're surprised that President Trump is crass and rude and racist sometimes and all of this. You knew who he was. He says Charlottesville really offended me. Look what he said about the Central Park Five. This man has been consistent his entire life. He has treated women poorly since he was old enough to date.
And all of that stuff was aired in the press over and over again. And none of it is surprising. And that's why it's really amateurish. If Romney wants to go after him on some of the policy issues.
But he can't, because on immigration, he's arguably more of a hard ass than Trump.
Language.
Pardon me.
It's a foreign policy.
He's a hardliner.
You can say immigration, it's okay.
He's a hardliner.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He absolutely is. But he's also really inconsistent. I mean, there's something so disingenuous about a person who really, really, really wants to be liked, but then, you know, at the same time grows this mysterious courage that gets everyone nowhere. The party panelists return a little bit later. However, we're going to talk about President Trump. He now says there's no timetable when it comes to withdrawing troops from Syria. That's a big reversal from his stance just last month. So what is behind the change? Buck Sexton will explain. The man, the hair. He's next. Lefty comics like Alec Baldwin have had their fair share of fun impersonating the president. So should anything be off limits in comedy? The panel is back. Jessica, Anthony, and Kat. Oh, Kat. Yes. I was delighted to see that people had an issue with my Nancy impression.
That's great. It's got more attention because people had an issue. That's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful thing. Congratulations.
Well, you can't get mad about that and then give anyone who makes jokes about the president a pass.
Right, absolutely. You have to be able to make fun of everyone who's in a position of power.
Amen.
It's not just fun to do. It's also really an important check on government power. That's why we have the First Amendment, because we are able to criticize our leaders. We are able to make jokes about our leaders. It's something that's really important to our democracy. So we need to make sure that we don't let someone be off limits just because. Is it because she's a woman? Are they sexist? Yes, I kind of agree with you that maybe they are the sexists, saying that she can't take a joke because she's a woman.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because if you've had a career as long as Nancy Pelosi, you've had to fight some real fights, and you have gotten dirty in the boys' club, which means that I'm sorry, like, you're on equal footing, and you've ascended to a point where people don't have to, you know, treat you like a bubble-wrapped baby princess.
As her own daughter just said, she's a vicious tactician, you know, and Alexandria, you should use a tripod in your films. But Nancy
dizzying.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi.
I love the one on Pastor Ted, though.
That was a good film,
yes.
But again, it is the shaky cam. I'm sorry, HBO's got a budget for a tripod.
It's not Blair Witch Project.
So, but Nancy Pelosi is, like, as was stated earlier in the show, she's on her second stint as Speaker of the House starting tomorrow. She is literally she's past the whip stage. The whip is supposed to be the person in Congress who is the person who, like, is the real tough person. She's that person's boss.
Yes.
Now she's going to have that job again. She should be able to, and I don't even say it's her. Anyone who's defending her honor should understand that the powerful are going to be subject to jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Stop being hypocrites.
Well, absolutely, and I think your last point there is the most important, which is I don't think Nancy Pelosi has any problem with this. I think actually she's perfectly happy to see a Fox News telecast right before the ball drops talking about her, and she thinks all press is good press.
No kidding.
And
I would love if someone made fun of me on a telecast.
If you're the politician who's getting roasted, half hour to midnight.
Well, it's like, no, think about it. You know,
wasn't
just
Elizabeth
had
Warren?
An interview.
Wasn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Well, if New Year happened next week, maybe we would have Elizabeth Warren. But, you know, you had a call from the president, and then we talked about Nancy Pelosi. Think about the power position that you are in there. And, I mean, although I find Jane Curtin hilarious, it was funny to me, the symmetry of what was going on CNN, where, you know, she was saying, I hope that, you know, in 2019 the Republican Party dies, or something like that, which I'm sure wouldn't be taken that well by people who are upset about this. But I feel like, generally speaking, people are thankful for Michelle Wolf to have been able to do what she did at the Correspondents' Dinner, and for you to do your impression, and for Alec Baldwin to make Saturday Night Live funny like 50% of the time, because the last one about Christmas was not as funny.
It was only okay.
It was only okay, but it has been very funny.
That's the thing. Push yourself. Like, I don't have a problem with comics who say horrible, offensive things.
Right.
I think that's a very important function of comedy. And sometimes people cross the line. I don't think those people deserve to be vilified.
Well, maybe everyone should be subject to criticism, but to have a career ended for a stray comment or a joke that went awry or a comedy bit that offended a small segment of the population, this is not the place we should be.
No, but it's where we are.
Unfortunately, it's where we are because it's cool to be offended now. The more weak and offended and pathetic you are somehow, the more powerful you become. And that's a very scary thing.
It is scary. Well, listen to this. This is scary. The failing New York Times. Former executive editor there, Jill Abramson, was fired in 2014. She doesn't mince words about her former employer. In her upcoming book, she says the Times had a, quote, implicit financial reward to be anti-Trump and criticizes her successor, Dean Baquet. Am I saying that right, Jessica?
Oh, thank you for asking me.
Yes.
Baquet. Okay. I've heard it both ways.
Okay. Though Baquet said publicly he didn't want the Times to be the opposition party, his news pages were unmistakably anti-Trump. Some headlines contained raw opinion, as did some stories that were labeled as news analysis. Abrams also placed some of the blame on those darn millennials, writing, the more woke staff thought that urgent times called for urgent measures. The dangers of Trump's presidency obviated the old standards. So is Abramson's assessment fair, or is she just trying to sell more copies of her book? I think she is onto something. I think there is an incredible financial incentive, and it's really hard to make money doing what the New York Times is doing. Are they going to change their formula because they're being hypocritical?
No, they won't change their formula. They're doing great. That's what's funny about the joke, the failing New York Times.
Right.
The subscriptions are way up.
Yes.
They're as profitable as they've ever been. And to be frank, like, you know, even though they did a good amount of the legwork in selling the Iraq War, they were there was editorializing in headlines during the Bush years and well before that. It's always been a paper for, you know, or at least speaking more directly to the liberal coastal
Snooty
elites.
liberals, with their cosmopolitan biases.
It's still an important institution. There's still incredible reporters there, and we rely on the reporting of the New York Times, even if a great deal of the editorial choices are skewed in one direction.
Kat?
I agree. I think that New York Times can do whatever it wants. This is a free country, and in a capitalistic society, they're just doing what's making money. I don't think that she's bitter. I think that she's absolutely correct. You can see it when stories are marked as news and they have opinion in them. That's pretty obvious what they're doing. But at least it is obvious. I think that most people would agree with her that the New York Times is liberal. Everybody knows that.
Well, I also agree that people know what they're getting. I think people are more sophisticated in terms of what is being presented to them. And they say, yeah, I want that. That's what I agree with. I would like to see more of that. The New York Times, to a lot of people who feel like they're intellectually superior, feels like news. And that's okay.
Yes, it's just because you described me and now I have to talk. No, I actually had some trouble with her criticism because what I think was the most important story of the 2016 election was Hillary's email server.
Which was broken by the New York Times.
New York Times article, and people have pointed to that as the reason that she ended up not winning. And
including Hillary Clinton. She blamed the New York Times.
But it's not, she
blamed a lot of things.
Yes, but she did blame, that was like her flavor of the week one week. Well, the New York Times haven't done that damn reporting.
But that is,
I don't know why she sounds like Nancy Pelosi.
It's an important development in the narrative that really cuts through the heart of the New York Times is only there to serve Queen Hillary.
Yes.
And the Washington Post, which has also been discussed there, what David Fahrenthold did, the reporting on the Trump businesses and the Trump administration and all the graft and the grifting and all of those words that sound the same, was incredibly important to the anti-Trump narrative, but based in facts and not opinion. Because they're saying that it's just a bunch of reporters saying it's opinion all the time.
The facts are few and far between. And I think there are people who feel that there really isn't objective news reporting left. I think objectivity is lower on the list. And I think Jill Abramson is right in that people feel that they have an obligation to push harder than they ever thought they would against a presidency because they think this president is either illegitimate or completely corrupt.
Don't you think social media, though, has made this worse? Because we know the personalities of these people, because Maggie Haberman tweets personally as well as professionally, and all these people, that is part of what is skewing all of this as well.
Not for most people. Most people have no idea who Maggie Haberman is.
Yeah, and Twitter is a minuscule portion of the population.
Really, because it's my entire life.
But, you know, same, but we all forget the fact that most of the country doesn't care about Twitter.
Great to talk to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Anthony and Jessica. Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year.
Elizabeth Warren is the first of what is sure to be many Democrats to throw hats in the 2020 ring. But does her new lame attempt to relate to the young voters, the young people, show how she's really out of touch? Tim Carney has reaction next.